is how to break through when everything you try just doesn't work. So this is a topic that I really like, and through everybody that I've talked to, all the students that come in and out, one of the biggest things that we always hear is, we come off with a round of golf, or we come out with a practice session where just things aren't going your way, and you kind of are, for lack of a better word, just in the dump at the moment that you're at right now. So, and you just don't know where to go from where you're at. So if you've played enough golf, and you definitely know what I'm talking about. If you have not yet felt and been in this situation, this is something, definitely you're going to find yourself into the more golf you play. This is just a part of the process that doesn't matter where you are in golf, where you are in life, you find ways, to go up, and you get the downs. And, it's always the most exciting when we're in the up, and we always panic and hesitate and don't know what to do when, things aren't going our ways. So, as we go through this, really imagine yourself in a situation that you've been, if you can think of something that's a little bit more recent, a recent round of golf, a recent time in your golf career where, a recent time in your golf career where you just didn't know where to go and nothing was working. And that's where we're gonna work on this evening and give you the strategies on how to get yourself out and get yourself back, making momentum and moving towards the goals that we want to hit. So the first one, if we look here, is before anything else, is I like to just say extract your greatness. And I like that phrase because whenever we're not in a whenever we're not in a good place, we always tend to look at everything that's going wrong, everything that's not going our way. And, we're just in a sense of confusion. So when I say extract your greatness, what I mean is, think about things that no matter how, good or how up to your expectation your performance is, or how you're doing, we can always pull like really good things that come out of any kind of performance, whether it's a practice round or a tournament or a month of just practicing and it's just not going our way. We can always pull things that went well. And if you can just stop and reflect as much as you can to step out of where you're at, and think about just a few things that's going well, just to kind of shift your mindset. I like to say, do your best to find all the light that comes, when you're in the darkness. So find the light when you're in the darkness. And as you think back at some of the times that you may have been struggling, even like in your round of golf, if you've been playing in a tournament just recently and your tee shots or your scrambling around the green just isn't going your way. Sometimes, as we're walking and we're playing, we can look, and there's a lot of time between shots, between tee shots, as we walk from the green to the tee, kind of stop and reflect back and kind of step out of where you're at and find, the most encouraging, positive thing that you can say, what did I do well, even though this happened? And if you train yourself and condition yourself to pull out and extract everything that's good, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to condition yourself to look for all the great things as opposed to all the bad things. And just a general rule of thumb, whenever you're trying to rate yourself in any way, before looking at any opportunity for you to work on, you always want to pull 5 really great, really positive, really encouraging things that happen in your performance, in your practice, in your round of golf, just in your life, before you criticize or come up with a story behind what's the one opportunity that would make my experience better. So always use that ratio. 5-to-1 is like the magic ratio of getting yourself from, when everything's not working, 5 great things that you're doing in this current moment or in that current moment or in the situation to pull yourself out to then say what is, the one thing that we could work on. And I'll share with you an example here. The last round of golf I played, I played with my brother. He was up here in town for the weekend, and we played 11 holes out on the golf course. And for me, I haven't played in that much time. And for him, he hasn't played in a while either. But we took the opportunity to hang out one afternoon that he was visiting from Hawaii, that we went out to go and play. And as far as up to our ideal standards, we both are kind of hitting it around. We're having a good time, but he definitely doesn't. He didn't have that much control over his golf ball, and neither did I. And I'll share a story around what happened with him when we played. So we got to hole 11 of the golf course that we were playing at, and he knew he didn't have too much control over the golf ball yet. He's a pretty confident person, so he took the line that he he wanted to go on, and he hit his drive. And of all the things that he could have done was, he snapped it left, hit a house, and broke the person's window. And we're laughing about it now, but as funny as it may be now, we saw it bouncing off a couple of the houses, and eventually it hit somebody's window, broke the window, and we kind of drove up there, kind of worried that hope it didn't hit somebody, and these kids came out and they said everything was fine, and we exchanged information. But talking about, like, you're not doing well, and it kind of snowballs. He's hitting it like some good shots, but it's starting to kind of not go his way. And even after the turn, he's kind of like, we got a dinner to go to, let's just go in. But I said, we got a little bit more light, let's go play a couple more holes. So I'm kind of shoving him into it, even when he didn't want to go, because he wasn't playing good. And all the things that could have happened, he hit a house and he broke the window. And being the player that he's been in the past, he's always been a great player. I was more like shocked than him of what happened. And he's pulling out things after he hit the window. Oh my God, did you see how many roofs that thing bounced off of, right? He's finding enjoyment out of what just happened, because he knows that shock he doesn't want that shock to come in, whether he's doing it on purpose or not. And then he's throwing jokes. He's finding like something that was funny. He's like, well, at least I hit it in the center of the club face, so it must have hit the window pretty hard. And, as a reaction to that, he's giving himself those type answers before it prepares him to like a later conversation that we had, a couple nights later. Was like, did you follow up with those people, that family, to just see if everything's okay, and worry about, anything that would have gone well, could have gone bad. So, out of anything that can happen, right? If you're playing golf and, you're having a rough time, if you haven't snap hooked it, hit a house and broke a window, then it's just not that bad. And if you can find yourself in a place where, as good as and as competitive as you are, sometimes you just got to step back and relax. There's always ways to extract like really good things that come out of, most missed opportune times and most tragic of situations, because that's just golf. We're always going to hit it left. We're always going to hit it right. There's always going to be times where we just don't know how to find the golf ball, and we just got to move on. And the quicker we can, we can train ourselves to just say, like, at least this is what I've accomplished during this dark time, during this hard time, then I can move on. So remember that 5-to-1 is our ratio. 5 opportunities or 5 great things before the one opportunity that would better your experience. Once you start shifting out of that, that mindset to move on, the next part is we want to always make sure we change your language. What I mean by that is, how many of you have come out, either coming out for a golf lesson or talking to your teammates, talking to your coach, and, they ask you, how you guys doing? And you say, oh, it's been horrible. It's terrible. It's just not going the way I want. It couldn't have, I don't know what's going on. Or even when it's going great, you say, oh, it's going good. you're kind of just stepping back, and you don't really get excited and say, yes, it's like the best it's ever been. I can't believe I'm doing this. I want to like figure out how to get more of what I feel now. We're always kind of in the back seat and saying like, it's just okay. We don't give us enough credit for what we've accomplished. And we come down as hard as possible in the opportunities that, aren't going our way. So, shift out the type of language that you're using. You want to stop using the words like bad or good. Put a description next to what, what you want or what emotion that you're feeling, right? So 2 and 3 kind of go around, the same thing. So 2 and 3 is clarity on the opportunity. So once you change your language, it's okay to just say, it's bad, but if we can change that language into something else, or if you say, it's not going that great, but, and you add a little bit of clarity on like the opportunity that's not going great, such as, my last 3 rounds or my last 3 tournaments, it just wasn't that good. And you can add some clarity because my tee shots weren't keeping me in play. I've been slicing my tee shots, or I've been hooking my tee shots, for the last 72 holes. And I just can't seem to find my way, to the fairway, or all of my shots, seem to be more thin in the last month or the last 3 rounds and where it's been. If you add a little clarity on that opportunity that you're looking at, then you're able to start changing the direction of where you want to go. Also, when you're looking at the opportunity, again, that's part of language change. A lot of times we're looking at what we're doing wrong. But one of my favorite words to use, instead of looking at what's bad, what's wrong, I always look at it as places of opportunity. Anything that's not going the way that I want it to go, it's an opportunity to shift and do something that's a little bit different, or sometimes a lot different, to change the course and the direction that I'm going, right? Obviously, if we're not going in the direction that we want, if we're not hitting the ball good, or, even in school, if our grades aren't going the way we want, you could easily say it's bad, it's horrible. But unless you make a big shift into like, why is it not going the direction that you want it to go, then you really wouldn't know what to do from there. And then you're just hoping for something to get better. And if you wait for hope, for a lucky shot or a lucky round to come in, then, sometimes those lucky shots, those lucky rounds, or those lucky tournaments, they never come, right? So know the direction that you're going, have the clarity on like, what's the opportunity that I'm looking for. If my scrambling game today, where I wasn't able to get up and down from anywhere, from 30 yards and in any of the greens for this event that I played, for the last 36 holes that I played, dive in deeper, get clarity on why was it that I couldn't get up and down from all of my 30 yards and in shots, or why is it that I was getting up in 3, up in 4 every single time and I wasn't getting the ball close enough? Was it my short putts that weren't falling? Was it the green reading that I had a very difficult time finding the speed of the green and reading the green? Was it my contact on those wedge shots that wasn't getting me the opportunities? All of those little things make the hugest difference, because if you just say my short game was awful and you go with that, there's an infinite number of things that you could work on that you don't want to waste your time on. So have the clarity on the specific opportunity that, was your challenge for that period of time before, going on to what's next, which would be designing your plan. So, as we're going through designing your plan, as we mentioned earlier, sometimes you just got to step back. Like, if we look back at extracting, like, what's great out of what just came out, or what's great that's going even when I'm in the middle of my round, step back for a minute just to kind of think, get yourself out of the place that you're at, to look from the outside. So you can take the things that you've just heard, right? What am I doing that's really good right now? You're changing your language to shift your mindset and shift your ability to take charge on what you want to do, but then see the clarity and the opportunities that you could do, in the round today, or plan to do. Because now you can step back in and then actually design a plan to get out of, you know, the drought that you're in at this moment. So when I say design your plan, you know, that means having extreme clarity on what it is that you need. So we'll go back to our short game example. And we'll give this example. If you're playing in a round, and let's just say my short game, my 30 yards and in, every time, you know, I'm missing the greens, my short game just, you know, isn't getting me in a place where I can, you know, salvage the scores that I want. I can't salvage my pars or my bogeys. I'm just, you know, making mistakes from everywhere 30 yards and in. You know, if you get yourself back and you kind of step back and look at it, you might be able to ask yourself a lot of different questions to be able to design what's my plan of action right now, right? And we can look back and say, well, is it my tee shots that is putting me in situations of recovery where I'm in the trees or I'm not hitting it very good? That leaves me in these really rough spots on my second shot where I'm trying to make things happen that are putting me 30, 20, 15, 20, 30, 40 yards from the green. And it has nothing to do with your short game. You're just getting placed in, you know, difficult situations because your tee shot just to start the hole. Or maybe your tee shots are great. And you would look at, is it your approach shots? Maybe your approach shots aren't very good, right? And when I say they aren't very good, maybe my contact is a little more thin today, or a little bit more fat. So they're going up 10 to 15 yards shorter than normal. Plus they're going to, since my contact's off, my direction is going a little bit off. So now I know that my approach shot is going shorter and a little bit more crooked. Is there something that I could do in my approach shots to get my ball closer to the green to take a little bit of the pressure off of those, you know, 30, 40, 20-yard shots that I'm not scrambling from? So sometimes it has nothing to do with your wedge game at all. Although we want our wedge game to be really good, sometimes we can make it better with something that, you know, that you're strong at, you know? So if you could extract, well, I'm not hitting it good in this one, but at least I'm not hitting good, but I'm staying in play and I'm not losing golf balls, right? That would be something that you would find in like this extract your greatness. I'm not hitting it the best, but considering I'm still giving myself opportunities. So knowing that I might be hitting it shorter, a strategy might be, let's say I'm going to grab more club. So if I miss hit it, I'm going to be closer to the green, or even if I hit it good, I'm still not going to be that much further away if I go over the green, right? So you're coming up with a specific design. If you're getting into your short game and it really is your short game, what is it that you're doing in your short game? Should I be playing it to a different part of the green? What can I do with the game that I already have in the game as I'm playing to make this experience better? There's always things you can do while you're playing to make your experience better. And if your experience goes up, then, you know, your scores will go down. All right, we always play at a much higher performance level, you know, when we're excited to be there, when we're, you know, we're excited about the shots that we're hitting, we're excited about things that could happen. And we always, you know, play our highest rounds of golf when we don't know what's coming, when we're in the dark, when we're confused, when we're just stuck. Design your plan also comes from periods of times when you're not playing golf, you're just practicing. You feel like I just got to practice and my practice just isn't going nowhere. You take the exact same steps through this first 3 here to design your plan. All right, you got to step out. And one of the common things that I hear is like, well, my ball keeps on going right and I don't understand how come it's going right. And we're using part of our language to convince ourselves that we don't know. If we sometimes step back and say, well, why is it that my ball's going right? It's nothing that you haven't heard before from anybody, from a golf coach, a teammate, a YouTube video, anything. If your ball goes right, that means your club face is pointing to the right. If you step back and you kind of acknowledge that, well, my club face is pointing right, it gets you to be a little bit more clear on designing, like, what could I do to then not get this club face to go right, make it go left, make it go straighter, anything but right. And you start giving yourself some options. So unless you give yourself a place to step back and kind of look inwards on, as opposed to from the inside outwards, you won't ever be able to see these opportunities that you would be able to work on and make your experience better, whether you're in the game or, you know, or you're practicing and preparing for a game. So that would be designing your plan. After you then design your plan, you could have a perfect plan in front of you, and excuse me, you have a perfect plan in front of you, and if your expectations aren't at the level that meets the design of your plan, then you're going to go cycle straight back into your mindset where you're now can't extract the greatness because you're saying, you're using your language, say, I told you it didn't work. It's not going to happen. It's going to take forever for me to get out of here, and I don't know what to do. So definitely set your expectations, meaning knowing where am I exactly in this space today? How am I hitting the ball? How am I scoring? Where am I going with this? And then you can design like little steps, right? We want to see, like, if I'm here and I want to be up here, oftentimes it's black and white where we're just saying, I'm here and I want to get here. And there's one little magic pill that's going to take me, or one magic swing key that's going to take me from where I'm here straight to this, in this moment, in this practice round, in this practice session, in this round of golf. I just got to go back and think, what is that one swing key that my coach told me that worked the other week? So those never work because we're going from one place and we're trying to skip all of these steps and go to where we want to be out here, right? We need to know and have expectations, say, well, I just need to get to here. Once I'm here, I can get to there. And I kind of make these incremental small gains all the way to the top. And when I say set your expectation, be extremely clear on what could happen, right? Not just what you want to happen. And we'll go down. We'll use the example that we talked about earlier for slicing the golf ball. And today, you know, it's just going to the right, or this whole week or this whole season, it just continues to go to the right. And you keep on saying, I just don't know what to do. One, we need to just say, well, it's going to the right, the face is open. But also know your expectations. If your expectation is, yes, obviously I want it to look really good where it goes high, it draws a little to the left, and it goes really far, right? That would be the end goal. But you have to know that in this process, if you're in a practice session or playing on the golf course, that one little motion isn't going to set apart and make you get to the end. So what could happen in the process of working on changing my ball flight to start to go and draw and go more right to left? I could still hit it to the right, but it might not go as far right. So if I'm hitting the ball 20 yards to the right and I'm working on something and it starts to go 10 yards to the right, that's like an incremental gain because it's left of where it used to be, right? Maybe I want it to go, you know, a nice high draw that goes 5 to 10 yards to the left and super far. Maybe I'll hit the ball straight, definitely left of where it was. You got to know where the incremental gains. And then we'll also get the shots that actually draw 5 to 10 yards, just like how we picture, but we mishit it. We hit it slightly thin, slightly on the toe, slightly on the heel. And then we tell ourselves, oh my gosh, I didn't hit it solid, right? So we start to self-sabotage ourselves just because we don't know our expectations. So you definitely have to set your expectations, because if you don't know what your expectations are, what the progression could be, when you hit these real critical steps in fixing or changing the development of where you're heading, you're going to be right on the correct path and constantly go up and you won't even know. So be able to measure. And expectation, and we talk about measuring everything, and expectations is definitely something that you need to be measuring, right? If you're trying to get out of the place that you're at, right, where you're stuck, you have to know what could happen and what is the progression that I could see as I go through it. Obviously, I want to get to the end of the light at the end of the tunnel, but what, you know, if I do it pretty good or pretty close, what could be the next one? And if I get a little bit better from there, what could be the next one? Obviously, if we're hitting tons of balls, you might get stuff that match up, but we'll also see ones that match up. Maybe they'll exceed a little bit, but they'll kind of bounce up and down. So know the progression and be super clear, right? Your expectations, it's something that, you know, if you're really in a place that you don't know where to go and you're having a hard time and you're getting help with, you know, the direction you need to go to get out of it, you do want to write down 100% all of the expectations that could happen on the path, because the one thing that you cannot afford to do is lose time by making yourself go up the path and think you're not going anywhere, and then you start another tip, another road, and you start veering off because you think it's not working. So, you know, expectation is extremely critical in this process of, you know, making your way out of, you know, the struggle that you're in. Once you kind of set your expectation, you kind of got through, you're extracting your greatness, you're going to change your language to get you out, have the clarity on the opportunity so you know exactly what you're looking towards and where to go from there. You're designing your plan of, you know, what are the steps, you know, like where do I go from here? You got your expectations of what could happen. 6 is going to be design your action plan. When I say design your action plan, this is the spot that we want to go to then list everything on your head, in your brain, on your mind of what you could do, things that you heard from a coach, an instructor, a teammate, a friend, YouTube, magazine, everything that you can think of that adapts to the place that you're at, and you're just throwing it down on a sheet of paper. So now you're creating options for yourself. So when we talk about creating options, you know, we want to condition yourself to be able to pull options. And as you're creating your action plans, you want to at least have minimum of 5 things that are in your action plans of what you're going to do. Little tactical strategies that's going to take you like up the ladder to where you want to go. And the reason why I say 5 is because too often we're just searching for that one little thing that we think is going to take us out. And sometimes we find it, sometimes we don't. But the problem is when you find it, what happens? Our field change, the mode that we're in, our emotional state changes. We'll play a different golf course, something happens, right? We might get a bad grade on a test, right? We might get overly excited off something. And all of a sudden that tip doesn't work anymore. And then you're back to the beginning. So you want to stay in this cycle as much as you can. So you're finding all of your action items to then say, well, I'm looking at all 5, all 10, all whatever you can list, at least 5, and you're saying, what is it out of everything that I have here that's going to resonate to me today, that's going to make the most sense that I'm going to attempt to do and spend the next 30 minutes, the next hour, the next week focusing on to get myself to commit on that. Because if that doesn't work, then you'll look back at the list again and you'll say, well, what's another thing that's going to resonate, that's going to make sense in my head, that's going to get there? And if that doesn't work, you're going to say it again. And if that doesn't work, you're going to continue to go down this list that you create for yourself until you eventually find the way out. And if you run out of steps to do, then what that causes you to do is saying, well, this doesn't work, and I'm going to shift course and I'm going to do something else and hope that takes me out of where I'm at. So have enough action items so you can constantly keep on, you know, pounding them out and get help where you need help, you know, with adding more action items in, but stay in this area here of knowing your expectations and then getting your action items in. So know the expectations, right? Find the action items. Do they fit in the plan that I've designed, right? And if you're in this mode here, then you're gonna eventually find yourself out. So the other reason, you know, why we want 5 or more is you're developing a skill. The skill that you're looking to develop is training yourself to find moments that are difficult and automatically recalling in your head, well, I could do this, 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 and you kind of have this list in your head. And so obviously if you're playing in a round of golf or in a tournament, you don't have a sheet of paper with all of these things because this would be happening as you play. But if you're practicing and you're preparing, you would jot all of these things down in a journal, and you would then journal all of this stuff out, see it all in front of you. But you want to create these action items in your head because more than just understanding what these action items are, you want to be able to recall as many as you can and kind of filter them in your head as you're playing, right? So be really good at saying, well, this is how it's going today. What can I do? Oh, I can do all of these things. What's the best move? What's the best action for me to take as I'm playing this tournament today? Round 1, hole 2, right? Which is a totally different plan that you might have, or action item. Let's say you're coming and everything's kind of falling apart and you're walking into hole 17 of your round, where you're just about done and you have 2 holes left in your tournament, right? But you want to be able to be really good at just recalling and kind of filtering them in your head. If you just think about that one key fix, then you'll be stuck every single time, because you'll be searching just for that one thing. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to find that one key that you remember, and it's going to make sense in your head. It's like, oh my God, you're going to take your practice swings. You're going to, slow it down on the golf course. And I promise you, the very worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to use it and it's not going to work. And then you're going to be lost. So have all of the action items in place. And, part of doing this is preparing outside of your rounds of golf. Like, we all run through hard times. Take your last, struggled round of golf and break it down and say, what did I do well? What kind of language could I create to keep myself more in, like, thinking in greatness? What is the specific clarity around the opportunity that I want to change in there? Kind of create the structure of your plan, set out your expectations, design your action plans, and then list them all out in your journal. So the last one, once we kind of have all that set, is going to be, create the environment for success. This is one of the biggest ones. Once we have all the clarity, we can also sabotage by having an environment that doesn't encourage us to succeed. And what I mean by that is, imagine if you're contact and you've been hitting the ball, thin for a very long time. You're hitting it, just a little low in the face. It's going about a club short of what you're playing, and it just doesn't feel good. You're getting all this negative feedback. You want to hit it solid, and you just can't figure out a way to hit it solid. And now you've come up with all the steps, and you designed it. You have all these little actions to do and to implement it in. And when we go out and practice on the range or in the practice facility, as we come up with our plan, is a lot of times we try and recreate the exact same scenario that we've been struggling with at the course or on the course. So what that means is we look at it always like in a one-to-one. If I want to hit it better hitting it thin from bare lies, that means I'm going to go find bare lies on the range and go directly to that and fix it with my action items. That may be a pretty good idea, but you got to take your feedback to say, there's a specific reason why those, thin or bare lies on the golf course made you hit it thin. You probably at some degree have been thinking a little bit of your action items and what you could be doing, and it still wasn't working. So you take it to the most difficult scenario on a practice facility, and then what happens is you start hitting it thin again, or maybe you overcompensate, you start hitting it fat. So now you have a thin shot and a fat shot in your head, and now you just think everything's going to collapse. So how you create your environment is the key to your success, right? One of the things that I would tell all of you to do is use the rule of 90%. If you can't accomplish whatever you're trying to do at a percent of 90% or more, if you're trying to think right now, how do I figure out if I can do it at 90%? Take 10 balls out, and if 9 of them aren't successful, 9 or more aren't successful, then you're not at 90%. You're shooting for 90% and to get beyond 90% before you make the environment more difficult. If you're only doing 1 out of 10, that environment is definitely way too hard, right? So find yourself an environment where you're close to 90% so you can get beyond 90, and then stretch yourself a little bit more. So if we go back to those thin shots, right? Maybe you just have to feel hitting the ball solid. You may have played 72 holes, hitting 90%, 95% of your shots thin, which when you go in practice, you're going to recall these shots and you're going to probably hit a lot of them thin. So what you do need is you need to start hitting the ball solid. Fine. You could start hitting it from a tee, play the tee a little bit higher that you normally would do, and then you apply like your specific action items of what you're trying to do. If it's trying to get steeper on it and take more of a divot, right, you're doing that with a tee to elevate the ball so you make more solid contact, right? And you do that till you hit a rate of 90% or more. Then you could then say, well, how can I stretch myself and make that a little bit more difficult? I could push the tee lower, and you could then tee it up lower, right? So now you get yourself into a lower tee where you may hit a couple thin, but now your rate of success is higher than when you have started with, right? And you're slowly designing your way to 90%. Eventually, when the tee gets good or it's easy off a low tee, you might find a fluffy part of the fairway on the range to hit from. And then you start hitting maybe a leaner part of the turf on the driving range to hit from, right? And you kind of work your way that way. And then finally, once you kind of get everything there, then you're kind of saying, well, can I hit it from this bare lie? And how can you make it more difficult? And then you would get it to there. And if you get that at 90% to see if your skills are transferring through, then how can I make it more difficult than where I'm at to see if I'm really understanding and really applying the skill that I just kind of took myself through. And then if you go from a bare lie, then you could go to a sandy lie. Sandy lie gets a little bit more difficult where you have to strike it a little bit better, or then to a fairway bunker, where it makes it a little bit more difficult for you to strike it more solid. So a lot of times through our clarity, we see where we want to be, but when you hit there, you also have to stretch beyond to increase the skills that you're currently looking for too. Because if that's something that's keeping you there, right, definitely it's going to be a place that's going to pull you back in. So you're going to want to strengthen those areas to withstand the most pressure of any situation that comes on. So that kind of takes us through this little framework of how to break through when everything you try just doesn't work. I had a couple questions that I wanted to bring up just to kind of make a little bit more sense of all of this, so to put it more into perspective. So if you've ever been in a place, where you just get, we've all been there, but you get into a place where you're super frustrated and you kind of come to that decision. Should I just keep on going and push through it, or should I just quit and maybe navigate something that will give me a little bit of momentum, right? So that's kind of the slippery slope that you personally have to go through, because we all want to make sure we push through. But when is it, like, how do we know when to keep on going, and how do we keep on going versus kind of shift direction? So my best advice to everybody is, you always you want to be the best problem solvers imaginable, because I'm always going to default to pushing through, right? Find ways to make the push through easier versus to quit and shift. Obviously, if it's times where you just can't take it, you may need a break. But at the end of the day, at the end of the term, the season, you eventually have to face what you need to do. So you definitely want to create ways that you can push through. And what I mean by becoming problem solvers is you want to be, as resourceful as possible to figure out, like, if I get a problem that's in front of me, what can I do? And what opportunities do I have present? How can I figure out how to get through, this struggle, this problem that's in front of me? If you look at where you've gone today, right? Think about wherever skill level you're at today, and think of a struggle that you had the first day you picked up your golf club, right? For everybody, the first day you probably picked up your golf club, you didn't know how to hold it. Everybody's telling you every which way to swing it. You have a million thoughts in your head. You may be hitting it on the ground or on the tee. The club might be too heavy. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, you're missing the golf ball. You're hitting more ground than the ball. The sound of the club making that swoosh sound is louder than the contact of your golf ball. And the ball is just not going anywhere. And if you imagine yourself where you were back then to where you are now, whether that's 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or even last year, or 2 months ago, or a month ago, we all have kind of grown along the way and broke through certain struggles that we have. When we think back at that first day picking up the golf club and we look back, it's just not that big of a deal and not big of a problem. We kind of laugh about it now because you saw the problem, you faced the problem, and you moved on, right? And if you look at it that way, then every time you solve a problem, your skills go up. So when we look at the best performers, athletes, students, anybody, the best performers in the world have solved the most problems that is in their field of whatever they're doing, right? There's not just like, I just want to do this and learn how to hit it perfect, and that's the one problem I'm going to solve for me to hit it perfect and break par for the first time. For them to break par for the first time, they had to have gone through hundreds and hundreds of problems that they figured out how to get through and got the coaching, and got the coaching to get them through those problems. So, think about how can I get through these problems that are coming up, and how can I get through more of them? And if you train yourself and condition yourself to be, the problem solver, as opposed to I'm stuck. So that would be, again, using a frame of language and to reshape what direction you want to go. So think of yourself as the problem solver. I'll kind of tie this back a little bit into, everybody here reads. So if you're reading, imagine even going back to the first book. You probably don't even remember the first book that you read, but it's just pictures, right? And if you look at it, you may not even want to look at it now, right? Because there's nothing to read. You're just looking through the pictures. What's next, right? So if you're looking at it for somebody that doesn't know how to read and they're just trying to, narrate a story through pictures, they're struggling to figure out what that story is about. Eventually they figure that out and they solve that problem. And then comes one or two words on the page with the pictures. And all of a sudden they're trying to sound the words out. They can't comprehend what's going on. And it takes them, some time or whatever it takes, right? A series of days, months, or a year to figure out how to get through that phase, and they solve that problem. Then all of a sudden they have smaller pictures with longer sentences or paragraphs, and you're trying to comprehend that stuff. And all of a sudden, if you get into high school, not many pictures, a lot more novels, a lot more, difficult comprehension. And then if you get into college, you read thicker books, smaller words, some vocabulary that we don't understand, but every level you look back, you've accomplished that problem and it takes you to the next level. So when you look back even to a year ago at the type of books that you read, right? Definitely a lot easier to understand, right? So the other consideration to know is as you solve these problems, they don't get easier, but we face the same emotional feeling. So if you think about our book example, just because it's an easier problem where it's just pictures, how do I understand the narration of the story through pictures versus my college book today doesn't have any pictures. It has diagrams of graphs and all this crazy stuff. And how do I make sense of this? Although they're totally different in difficulty, the emotional sense that you go through in the struggle is identical, right? Your problems get more difficult, the higher your skill level gets. So if we're still working on changing your language, you can also, I also challenge you to look at, telling yourself the story, the harder my problems are, the better skill set that I have. So challenge yourself to difficult problems. Don't default to saying, well, I'm just going to do with what's easy today, just to get a sense of fulfillment, like you to get through something. So find the fulfillment in the journey of saying, well, this I tried really hard at and didn't work. But what could fulfill me is, what is the next thing that I could do, right? What is the next thing that I could do? And eventually you start solving the problem. So be the problem solvers, and definitely the more problems you can solve in your life, in your school, in your golf career, the higher you're going to be able to take the level of your golf game. So that being said, I will leave it out to any questions. I do have, I think it's a question here. So Amy is asking, I have to make like 9 out of 10 of my putts then, that's 90%. So that'll be a skill question. So that kind of depends of how far. So that would go straight into our expectations phase. So it'd be a great thing to have 9 out of 10 putts go in, but if you know the expectations of where you're putting from and how much should go in from a specific distance at the level that you're at, then you would say 90% of that. So for example, if we're talking about putting, one of the stats on the PGA Tour would be, on the PGA Tour from 8 feet away, the percent that a PGA Tour player on average makes an 8-foot putt is 50%. So if you have that as your expectation, that would be like a huge goal to strive for. I want to be 50% from 8 feet all the time. You know, obviously when we look at players that win the event, they're definitely putting above 50%. 8-footers are going in 90+% of the time. They're not missing many of those. But when we look at the bulk of the average person in the middle of the field, right, they're making about half, 50% of them. So if we're looking in at the capabilities that we have now, and my expectations is, if I'm shooting for 90% from 8 feet away, then it's a never-ending struggle, because you're going to get disappointed every single time, just because the best in the world are only at 50%. So you may create, then you would create a different environment. So if we go into create the environment for success, you could then say, if we're using that same ratio, if I want to make it at 50% and get pretty close to the best putters in the world, could I set a gate, let's say that's 2 times the width of the hole. So if the hole is 4 1/4 inches wide, could I put tees on each side of the hole to make it 8.5 inch wide window, so double the size at 8 feet, and then also put the flag stick or a club behind it with whatever speed window that you want to have behind there, whether it's 6 inches or a foot behind, but you have some kind of margin back where you're controlling the speed. That is something that you could shoot for. Yes, I can get 90% or more in something like that. So you create the environment to then make it through the double size window, and with the perfect speed that you're putting with, to achieve that 50%. And you know, just to explain how that works is, if you have perfect speed and the hole takes up, or the space that you have takes up 2 times the size of the hole, if you fit it through that window every single time, 100% of the time with really good speed, you'll make it at 50%, right? So that would be just because the hole would take half of the space that you're hitting it in, and if you hit it with perfect speed, the hole just covers half of the space and you'll make it at 50%. So if you're ever trying to putt like the pros from 8 feet, design yourself an environment in practice, a perfect capture window of 6 inches to, I like 6 inches past the hole from that distance, with a 8.5 inch window that the hole fits between. And if you make that and get really good at that, then you definitely make your way into your 90% window. So think 90% to whatever your success is. So I hope that helps there. We have a question from Giselle. I forgot to ask you, what do you mean of negative feedback when you talked about shots? So excuse me. So negative feedback, when you're talking about shots, that has everything to do with your language. So whenever you're doing anything, you have like pre-thoughts, thoughts that you're thinking of like before you enter whatever it is you're entering, whether it's an activity you're gonna do, whether it's going into the car, whether it's gonna hit a golf ball. You have a thought that is going in your head before you actually commit to doing something and doing the action. You also have thoughts while you're in the action. So if we go back to, let's say we're hitting a golf ball, right? You have a thought of what you're thinking before you hit the ball. You'll also have thoughts as you're sitting over in the moment of trying to hit the ball. And then you have post thoughts. What happens after you hit the ball, right? You can't just not think anything. It's just a reactive thing that happens no matter what, right? An example would be, oftentimes we may get prepped on thinking good things before the shot, thinking good things or very direct things in the moment of hitting the shot. But when we hit the shot or when we do the activity or set it off, there's a post thought that goes through that most of us don't even think about, and it's more a reactionary thought. So when we're thinking about negative feedback, the feedback, I'm assuming you're meaning after you hit the shot. So it's that post thought. That's something that you need to condition in there, because your negative feedback or your post thoughts that you tell yourself or the post conversations that you have has everything to do with you being able to extract like really good things from the situation that you have. So if I'm coming up there and my post thought and I'm taking a putt and I'm putting from 2 feet away and I'm going to tap that thing in and I hit it and I miss it. And if my reaction and post thought is always like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just missed that thing. I never miss 2-footers. That puts me in a downward spiral. And then if we go back to here, there's no ways from that moment that I'll be able to say like, what did I do great? Because I just fully immersed myself in this negative feedback or this post thinking that told myself I couldn't do it. I can't believe I do that. I never do this. And all of this spiral of negative things. So when you do talk about, your feedback to yourself, acknowledge, like if you're catching yourself always being negative and the reactionary way, acknowledge the fact that it is negative, right? It's easy for anyone to come to tell you and say, Giselle, just think beautiful thoughts and it's going to be great. But nobody's experiencing the emotional feeling that you're going through in that moment. So in my experience, the best way to shift is to acknowledge the emotion that comes in and make a conscious decision to then shift the course of where it's going to be. So for example, if I get that 2-foot putt and then I go over there and I hit it, I might say, and I miss it, I could still go, oh my gosh, I can't believe, and catch myself before I finish it, and then correct myself and say, well, at least it's not that far away where I made the next one back, or I can make the next one back, right? So acknowledge that, yes, it's okay to feel this emotion. It's okay to say this, but think of it like a record, right? If you play the same record over and over and over again, the pattern that you're trying to shift is going to be very difficult. So what you're trying to do is if you come back and look at, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But I thought I was going to say something, that's okay. But think of it like a record that's playing over and over again. right? And if that pattern never shifts and never changes, you're playing the same thing. And if you go through the same thing and say, well, oh my gosh, I can't believe I missed out. Oh my God, I never missed those. And you finish the song, then you never break that pattern. So one, acknowledge and understand like this is the trigger that happens and this is the story that I tell myself. So if you know what the story is, then as soon as the story goes off, you can do something to stop the story and then redirect it. So I'll go up there and I'll miss it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe, oh, once I feel that trigger, I can't believe it didn't go that far away. And we switch the narrative. Now from there, I can say like, well, I made 3-footers coming back a ton of times and it's a pretty flat putt and I'll be able to walk around and redirect that way. So going through your negative energy or negative feedback, definitely don't just ignore the negative things. Acknowledge that they're there, break the pattern and redirect it. And once you get really good at redirecting where this pattern is and acknowledging where it's at, redirecting it, only then you can make a decision to then say, when you hit it, oh, that was at least pretty solid. I promise you, if you just, the words only take you so far. If you just condition yourself to say, every time you hit a putt that missed from 2 feet, it's like, well, at least I made contact. You'll just go through the story, but in your head, you're gonna like, oh my gosh, but I'm gonna go through this and tell myself, at least I hit the putter face, and that won't take you anywhere. So before you can make that big shift, again, definitely acknowledge the feeling that you have, find the pattern, interrupt the pattern in the middle to redirect it to what you want it to do. And then once you get that redirection going and you build that pattern up, then you can shift to every time you do this, you have this positive feedback coming out. And that'll help you always stay kind of within this framework that we're looking at so you can extract all the good stuff from no matter where you're at. And, and then you'll find yourself, being able to pull yourself out of every situation, every encounter that you come up with. So I promise you, the more you play golf, these dark places that you're in, all these feelings, these emotions, these slumps, whatever you want to call them, they're going to come out at no matter what level of golf you achieve. They just become more difficult problems the further up you go. So learn this now and start implementing this in your life. And then in your golf game, think about stuff that you're already good at, right? If you're struggling in golf right now, or you're looking to take yourself to the next level in golf, pick apart something that you're already very, very successful at. If you're successful in school in a certain topic, kind of take what gets me successful. When you're in that great mood, can I still pull up more great things? Can I increase my language? Can I get more clarity on the things that I can still strive for? Can I design my plan? Can I set my expectations for the next level? Can I design my action plans to take me there? And what environment can I create to succeed at the next level, right? Do it around the things that you're highly successful about, because now you're building the habit of getting yourself, out of wherever it needs. And if you do it enough, then, it doesn't matter what the situation is. You're just creating this framework of habit of taking your life through. And golf just happens to be, if you're in here, golf just happens to be the thing that you're excited about to go to the next level with. So I hope that made sense for you. I have one more question. Do I have to do the 90% thing all the time, like chipping, sand, putting, green and regulation, whatever that is? P.S. And he says, GIR is really good if you keep on doing it. Got it. So the 90% rule is, think about the 90% rule in your expectation and your skill set that you're at. So wherever you're at, think of and I'll give you an example here. Try not to think of like big outcome things like my score needs to be 36 or 72 90% of the time, because there's so many things that need to go in alignment to hit those scores of 72, 36, or breaking par, that the score in the result or making like specific, like really fine-tuned shots happen. Think about general framework. So if you're thinking score, or like you say, chipping, sand, putting, you just would have to be a little more clear on like what that is for you. So like chipping, if we're looking at chipping it from, let's say, 10 to 30 yards away, and chipping that inside 20 feet, right? Looking at something, where am I at now? If you're chipping it to like 30 to 40 feet, you're always looking at stretch goals. So have the clarity of where you're at now, right? Know where am I realistically in chipping. If I'm chipping, let's just say, I'll give you an example. If I'm chipping to 40 feet on average, my stretch goal would be, well, I want to get to 90%, but then 90% to 3 feet is not really realistic because I'll be there all day and I'll probably never get there just because the best in the world haven't got there. But let me get 90% to 30 feet and closer. Then you achieve 30 feet and closer. And then maybe your next stretch is like, can I get it to 25 feet and closer? And then your next stretch goal might be a little bit more specific, from just 30 or 25 to 30 yards or 20 to 30 yards in that 10-yard bucket. Can I get it into 20 feet 90% of the time, right? Sand, it might be in a sense that if you can't get out of the sand, can I just make it out of the sand 90% of the time? If that's a little bit too far of a stretch, maybe you're one of the players that, if you're one of the players that are unable to hit the ground, and hitting the sand is critical to getting out of the sand, your stretch goal might be, I just need to hit the sand 9 times out of 10 every time I go out there, because when I go out there, every time I don't go out, all I do is clip the ball and I top it and it stays in the bunker, right? So your little 90% rule there is around the skill set that you're at. Green in regulation would be the exact same. We wouldn't think I need to hit green in regulation. For those of you who don't know what a green in regulation means, it means that you're on the green putting for birdie or less. So depending on what the par is, par 3, par 4, or par 5, if you're sitting on the putting green and you're putting for a birdie or less, that means you've hit the green in regulation, or GIR. So if you're trying to accomplish hitting 90% of the greens of 9 holes or 18 holes or 72 holes, whatever event that you're playing, that's a little, well, not a little, that's extremely high for what you're trying to achieve. So maybe you're in a place that, you hit 1 green every 9 holes. So your stretch goal would be, can I get 2 greens 90% of the time? So all of these things, they're not measured like off of one time, right? If you're looking at rounds of golf and these bigger bulk things, you're going to measure it over the course of my next 5, 10 rounds or so. Am I hitting it? Am I seeing the momentum out of there? If you're looking at shot types, well, if I'm hitting it and I'm hooking it, right? And I want to straighten my ball and maybe have it hook within a 10-yard window with my 7-iron as opposed to a 25-yard window, you might then say that would be my stretch goal, right? Narrowing it down just a little bit and making it curve a little bit less. It wouldn't be from going, I'm hooking it 25 yards with my 7-iron. I'm going to hit it perfectly straight 90% of the time. But you could take a bucket of balls and say, can I get 90% of my balls to hook within this 10-yard window, or have 10 yards of curve as opposed to 25 yards of curve? And that you can be able to measure like session to session. So I hope that one helps there. Thank you guys all. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Please take what we just learned this evening, start implementing it in the great parts and the awesome parts of your life already, so you build this habit in. So when you do get stuck in these moments, you built in this muscle, you built in this habit, that you just kind of go through this design and take yourself out of it. I promise you, you are going to get to those dark places. You are going to struggle. this is just the way to get out. So thank you guys again, and we'll see you guys all soon.